Should you bootstrap or raise money? Well, a lot of founders have often asked me this question, and my answer has been that do whatever floats your boat, right? Startups are a 10-year journey minimum, and we need to do whatever it takes to survive, scale, and grow the business. But here is the thing, this decision to bootstrap or fundraising, it'll change the direction of your business, it'll define the culture of your business, the growth of your business. Now, like with most things in life, everything, you win some, you lose some, right? So what really happens when you're bootstrapping, when you decide to bootstrap, what do you lose out on? What happens when you decide to raise a lot of money, and what do you lose out on? There are two aspects of running a business. One is control, right? It doesn't matter how big or small you are, but you want a complete control on your destiny. I mean, after all, this is why you were started up, right? So you want to have a control on your destiny. You want to know where you are going. And at the same time, whenever you want to make a change, you can steer the company in a certain direction. For example, if tomorrow you decide to build a consumer company, you decide that, okay, you figure out that it's not working out. You go and say, okay, I'm going to do an enterprise SaaS, right? So the decision to change the direction, and that also means your business model, your product, and everything else, right? So that is the control that you need, that is on the company. Second is growth. We all want to build a high growth business, right? Nobody wakes up and says that, okay, I want to build a slow growth business. But here's the thing, growth comes with a cost. Now, what is the cost? If you go back to 2021, there was a lot of money in the ecosystem. Everybody was raising money. Companies ended up raising millions of dollars, and they were winning all the awards. They're doing a lot of PR, and everybody was covering them. Wow, these guys are awesome. Today, they don't have even money to pay salaries to employees. I'm talking about Byju's. So similarly, a lot of companies focus on growth at any cost. And the founders lost control of the business. So now it has reached a point where founders, even to make a small decision that whether to go in X direction or Y direction, they need to go and talk to their stakeholders and convince them. It takes time. You lose out in competition, right? So to run any business successfully at scale, you need control and growth. And you need the right mixture. How do you define the right mixture? Well, I have a framework, my friends, and it starts with 2 by 2. Go back to your MBA days, right? So on the x-axis, I have two extremes, which is low control, high control. And on the y-axis, I have two extremes, which is low growth, high growth. Now, what happens when you are a low control and low growth business? Honestly, that's a disaster. That's a dead zone. You should never be in this space. This happens with a lot of companies who have some traditional stakeholders, and they end up giving away equity for nothing, and eventually the founders have very little control, and the business model has flopped, so there is very little growth, right? So exit the business, figure out, but do understand that you are in a dead zone. What happens when you are in a low control, high growth? So, by the way, when I'm saying low control, high growth, what I'm talking about is an extreme end, right? So obviously most businesses are somewhere in the middle of all of it, right? So think of a very well-funded company which has raised Series C or Series D. How much control do the founders have? So typically they won't have more than 10 to 15% equity left, right? But at the same time, they have very high growth. They are firing in all cylinders, and they're essentially growing very, very well. And it's a great funded business model, right? So you raise money, you deploy that money in growth, and you obviously give away equity for that. And if you're able to make it big, well and good. If not, well, figure out. Next, let's move to high control and low growth. This is where bootstrappers are. You have very high control on the business. You can decide what you want to do, but you have low growth. Why do you have low growth? Because typically, I'm talking about a typical bootstrap business, it is low on working capital. You're figuring out working capital day in, day out, and which also means that you cannot hire the best engineers, the best marketers. You cannot spend like loads of money in growth marketing. So you grow slowly, but at the same time you have control. There are great companies who are bootstrap businesses, right from Zoho, Zerodha to Basecamp, etc., etc. We are also bootstrap, but the point that I'm trying to make here is that you have a lot of control on what experiments you can run and what is it that you can do. For instance, can you pivot today and move from, say, direction A to direction B? You're only answerable to your customers, right? So if you can convince the customers, if you can grow the new customer base, that's fine, right? Nobody questions you, nobody cares about you anyway. So that's a bootstrap business. What's the real fundamental great business model, which is high control, high growth? This is an utopian world. This is an ideal world. Very few companies have made it to this zone. And I mean, I can think of a few companies like Zerodha, Zoho, Basecamp, etc. And the funny thing is that when you look at companies which are very high growth and very high on control, they mostly are bootstrap businesses, right? Because they are also able to launch new businesses without going through all the drama of convincing investors. So they're able to move fast, but at the same time, their fundamental business is growing very, very well, right? So these are the four quadrants of control and growth. It all depends as a business, where do you want to be? So keep in mind that you can move from bootstrap to funded, but not the other way around. So you have to be extremely, extremely clear that maybe you can start as a bootstrap business, figure out for the next few years, and then when you need funding, you grow. But you cannot raise Series C and say, boss, I'm done. My investors suck. I'm going to lay them off and I'm going to go in a bootstrap mode. No, it doesn't happen that way. So just be aware that when you are taking this decision to bootstrap or raise money, which game do you want to play? Are you trying to be high control, low growth, low control, high growth? Or, I mean, eventually we all want high control, high growth, but what would it take for me to move there, right? So happy building.